Hey everyone, Ryan Flugaur, Vice President with the National Association for Gun Rights, coming at you with another video here today. You know, it's not just the big guys that the corrupt FBI is playing politics with anymore. Like letting Hunter Biden off scot-free for a crime, a gun crime that ordinary citizens would do hard time for. It's ordinary gun owners like you and me. They're messing with our rights, specifically our Second Amendment rights. In this video, I'm going to show you how a little-known list that the FBI maintains threatens to end gun ownership in America for good. It's no secret that the left is looking for any excuse they can to find and take away your guns. After all, in states like New York, they're making you turn over your social media accounts so they can go digging for reasons to deny you. That's what happened after their Bruin ruling that struck down their May issue permitting scheme. In California, since the days where Kamala Harris was their attorney general, they've actually been deploying gun confiscation squads, all under the guise of their state version of the NICS system.
FBI, open up!
But first, we need your help to stop it. So please hit that subscribe button and sign the petition in the description and pinned comment below to get involved in this fight. Many of you know about the National Insta-Check System, or NICS. If you don't, it's background checks. It's the federal system that backs up the Form 4473s that you have to fill out and get approved when buying a firearm from a gun dealer. And it's run by none other than the good old boys at the FBI. NICS traces its roots back to the 1994 Brady Bill, signed into law by President Bill Clinton. On the surface, the law's text actually bans the creation of gun registries, including database of gun owners and purchase transactions. But fast forward 30 years into the digital future, and no one buys that crap anymore. Sure, it's still the law, but with the ever-consolidating digital databases, consumer databases that are available, plus a reckless Biden administration that gets away with breaking the law time and time again, that's turned out to be the exact gun registration system gun owners always thought it would be, and we warned people about back in the 90s. And if you're not on one of their lists, you could be very soon, either because weak Republicans will sign off on new laws to enforce current gun control, or because an anti-gun prosecutor with a bone to pick will be able to find something in your past that they think counts as a gun ban under existing law for you. Guys, as I go over this, keep in mind, this is what enforcing current gun control looks like when a squishy Republican like Lindsey Graham or Mitt Romney tries to use that argument on Fox News. It's a thinly veiled cover for banning more and more law-abiding Americans from buying guns, and Republican lawmakers, frankly, are too chicken to fight it. In fact, many of them are actually supporting it, and I'll tell you about how they've been doing that a little bit later. So just how many Americans are banned from owning a firearm, and how bad is this problem getting? Well, we did a study here at the National Association for Gun Rights to find out. And it's clear, based off of one FBI database alone, the NICS index, or the NICS indices, it's actually a collection of a couple of different lists, that the answer is a lot. And it's increasing exponentially every single year. And it sort of looks like Al Gore's global warming hockey stick. Let me ask you a question. How many people do you think are banned from owning a firearm in the United States today? About 28 million. That's the number of records that are in the NICS index right now. Of course, that number is just one estimate with tons of caveats, all of which I'll get to. And yes, for those of you who are commenting right now, and I can hear your keyboards clicking, saying that the answer is really zero because of the Second Amendment, yep, I'm with you, but the government is still trying, and of course, tyrants are going to do tyrannical things. We isolated a 3-year rolling average. The current 3-year rolling average is 110% every single year. What that means is that every year NICS is growing 10% larger than the year before. And if we continue on that trend, 60 million records will be in NICS by 2030, and 155 million will be in NICS by 2040. By the year 2048, it will exceed the entire population of the country. NICS is where all the people are stashed who the government wants to strip gun rights from without due process, without adjudication through an actual court of law. It loosely groups names of Americans into categories like mental defective and others from the Gun Control Act of 1968. In other words, crazy people, decided by some, and this is a quote, board, commission, or other lawful authority. Not a judge. In many cases, not even a medical professional is involved. When President George W. Bush left office, there were only about 5 million records in the NICS index. But Bush signed the 2007 NICS Improvement Amendments Act, or NIAA, which dumped more names of so-called mentally ill people in the wake of the Virginia Tech shooting into this database without a single Republican senator voting no, and all again without due process. So it's no wonder that when Barack Obama left office just a few years later, having failed to pass most of his gun control agenda, the total number of records in the NICS index ballooned to 15 million. Thanks, George. In just 6 years under Trump and Biden, we've gone from 15 million to 28 million as of January 3rd of this year. That's right, the federal no-guns list expanded a whopping 500% under President Obama, Biden, and yes, even under Donald Trump's watch. Included in NICS are over 250,000 VA beneficiaries, largely veterans who were returning from war in Iraq and Afghanistan. They were largely put into the NICS database under President Bush and Obama, not because they're suffering from PTSD or because they're crazy, but simply strictly because they signed their spouse up to manage their benefit paperwork. The states are dumping names into NICS too without any uniform standard. Every state government has a different process for deciding who goes into it. For example, Pennsylvania gave 600,000 mental health records to NICS in one massive 2013 data dump, and that amounts to over 8% of the whole state's population at the time, more names than California submitted. In 2016, President Obama tried and failed, thanks to our lobbying efforts, to hand the FBI the names of 4.2 million senior citizens for inclusion in NICS. We called it the Social Security gun ban. Thankfully, it was defeated. He also tried to link the federal government's secret no-fly list to NICS, which would have further hidden details about why you're on the no-gun list behind FISA courts. But Republicans in Congress have been eager to placate the Democrats in adding more names without due process. Every year for over a decade, Congress, under both parties' control, has been funding grant programs for states to digitize and submit records to NICS. In some cases, the records they're putting in there are decades old, and these grant programs are moving from state to state every single year. Of course, not a single state, much less a Republican-controlled state, has actually rejected that money. One would think that the only pro-gun solution would be to put an end to the NICS index once and for all, or at least audit it and get rid of the bogus and subjective records that have been not signed off on by a judge. But no. In 2018, Texas U.S. Senator John Cornyn, the second highest ranking Republican in the Senate, rammed through the so-called Fix NICS Act, which put FBI NICS reporting for all states and agencies on steroids with the goal of, quote, maximizing record submissions. And Trump signed it. The scary thing is there's no end in sight because the emphasis of both Congress and the executive branch and even the courts, not to mention state agencies, it's all to dump more and more names into this database, almost as if more names equals more grants and bigger agency budgets, because, well, thanks to John Cornyn, actually it does. But last summer, Joe Biden and Cornyn added more misdemeanor-level offenses and juvenile records that will result in lifetime gun bans that the FBI will need to track and add to the NICS system. And with the red flag gun confiscation stuff going on right now and being funded by new congressional and grant programs too, it's not hard to see how these records are going to someday end up in the hands of the FBI too. But let's talk about the other databases. The NICS index actually has very few felons. You know, the one category a background check system should maybe prioritize if it were actually serving the public safety purpose that Democrats claim it's there for? Well, that's because they're actually in other databases, which the NICS system, background check system as a whole, also does look at. These more legitimate criminal databases are not without their own problems, but there are a lot of records in there too. So when you go to get a background check and buy a gun, whether it's through direct FBI NICS check, or if it's through a state with a point of contact set up like the CBI in Colorado or PICS in Pennsylvania, you're first pinged off of the NICS system, which, as we established, 28 million records. But you're also run against the National Crime Information Center, or NCIC, which currently has 12 million records. Now we're up to 40 million. Then there's the Interstate Identification Index, or III, which currently has 70 million records. So between those three databases, we're talking 110 million records total. Of course, that's not individual people, because criminals often commit multiple crimes and not all crimes are gun prohibitors. There are, at least for now, a lot of illegal immigrants in databases like NICS too. So that somewhat tampers the insane record count that we've been talking about so far, but keep in mind, that's still 33% of the entire population right now in the country. Now, there's one other database I'd like to warn you about, and this was a little different. It's called the National Data Exchange, or IN-DEX, Index. That's a database of over 400 million records, and they're largely non-adjudicative records. We're talking police reports, encounters with law enforcement, etc. Things that might not even be admissible in a court of law, but exist to improve law enforcement's access to information, not just for guns, but for other things. Right now, Index is largely being used to help the FBI agents making determinations on gun background checks, but only in the small percentage that are delayed for some reason and require further evaluation before the sale gets ultimately approved or denied. Under federal law, they have 72 hours to render a decision before the sale legally can proceed. Some gun dealerships won't do that still. But here's the thing. The Bloomberg left really wants to make Index a fourth database, a primary database when doing the NICS background checks. That way, they have more hearsay about law-abiding gun owners to gunk up, delay, and ultimately deny as many gun purchases as possible. Think about that. Non-adjudicative records, essentially rumors and hearsay in the hands of the same bureaucrats who are quite literally weaponizing the ATF and the FBI and other three-letter agencies against conservatives and pro-gun Americans. That's scary. It's almost like they want to turn every traffic stop into a cause to red flag you and take your guns. That's why this is so dangerous and why your National Association for Gun Rights is pushing for Congress to abolish the NICS system entirely. Given everything we've talked about, what do you think? Should the FBI or the ATF really be categorically denying millions of Americans from owning guns without due process? What will our Second Amendment rights really look like when the right to bear arms only applies to half the country or less? Let us know what you think in the comments section. Hit that subscribe button. Visit gunrights.org so we can bring you more gun policy research, studies, and updates like this. And if you disagree with any of these anti-gun policies, do me a favor and pick up that phone, call your congressman, especially if they're a Republican, because frankly, we got to put this to an end once and for all.